Good evening. Tonight, from Detroit, we go after the story of conflict between big business and big labor, between the automobile companies and the United Auto Workers, a struggle that promises to shape the future of our entire economic system. Our guest is the president of the United Auto Workers, Walter Reuther. His new profit-sharing plan for union working men is being attacked by big business as a giant step towards socialism. Mr. Reuther, in a moment I shall ask you to answer that charge. We'll get your opinion of the men who make it, and we'll get your views on unemployment now and in the year ahead. My name is Mike Wallace. The cigarette is Parliament, another fine product of the Philip Morris Company.
The new high-filtration filter, Parliament, presents the Mike Wallace Interview.
We'll talk with Walter Reuther in just a minute. Just a week ago tonight, we introduced this new high-filtration Parliament cigarette. Since then, it's been continuously in the news. Here are just a few of the clippings. And here is what they all add up to. This new hi-fi Parliament has the most complete filtering action in cigarette history. The reason? This all-new exclusive recessed filter. This Parliament filter gives you three important advantages that no other cigarette can offer. First, 30,000 traps. No other popular cigarette delivers less nicotine and tar. Second, only this Parliament filter, set deep down inside here, prevents the trapped nicotine and tar from touching your lips. And third, this exclusive recessed filter protects the pure tobacco flavor of Parliament. That's what we mean by complete filtering action, and only Parliament has it. It's the first filter cigarette in the world that meets the standards of the United States Testing Company. The all-new Parliament, now on sale everywhere at popular price. And now to our story. Yesterday here in Detroit, Walter Reuther and his United Auto Workers finished hammering out their plans for upcoming contract negotiations. Their demands will include increased unemployment benefits, an undisclosed but apparently substantial hourly wage hike, and most controversial, a profit-sharing plan that has outraged the big three, Chrysler, Ford, and General Motors. When contract negotiations begin this spring, Mr. Reuther will demand that the big three share 25% of what he calls their excess profits with the union rank and file. He will also suggest that the corporations take another 25% of these excess profits and distribute them to car buyers at the end of the year in the form of rebates. And so, Mr. Reuther, the first question I'd like to put to you is this. What is the idea, the philosophy behind this profit-sharing demand? If your union wants more money, why doesn't it simply ask for higher wages, the way that unions have been doing all along? Why profit-sharing?
Well, we have proposed profit-sharing for 1958 because we believe this is the most effective way to expand purchasing power. And purchasing power is the key to the economic future of the American economy. Our economy is in trouble. There's a serious and growing imbalance between expanding productive power and lagging purchasing power. And we believe that workers, consumers, and farmers are being shortchanged and that they are not getting their fair share of the fruits of our developing technology.
Well,
the giant corporations are getting more than their share. They're getting a disproportionately large share, and because they are keeping more than their proper share, this is creating this serious imbalance out of which unemployment and recession is developing.
Yes, but Mr. Reuther, you could get your proper share, what you call your proper share, by a higher wage rate. What I'm asking you to tell me is, what is the philosophy behind, instead of a higher hourly wage rate, what's behind the idea of sharing in the profit at the end of the year?
It's a very simple idea. What we're saying, in effect, to the General Motors Corporation, to Ford, to Chrysler, to other corporations, we have devised a two-pronged approach to collective bargaining in 1958. We want a minimum economic demand which we know can be paid out of the increased productivity measured by the level of productivity in the total economy. That's the way of measuring the economic progress that every worker is entitled to make based upon the growth of our economy, based upon the progress in our technology. Now we say we will defer the balance of our equity until the end of the year, so that realizing the balance of our equity will not create inflationary pressures on the price structure. The prices will have been paid, the profits will have been made, and at that point we say that workers, consumers, and stockholders should share in getting their equity out of the fruits of advancing technology.
All right.
Now, this is not only a matter of economic justice. This is a matter of economic necessity, because our free economy will not work unless we maintain an expanding and dynamic balance between higher productive power balanced by higher purchasing power. And when one gets out of joint with the other, we get in trouble.
All right. Now, Mr. Reuther, if I may, for the rest of these questions, can I ask you to be just a little bit less lengthy?
I'll try.
In your answers. I don't want you to shorten them so that there will not be sense within them, but if you can be just a little bit shorter in your answers. Mr. Breach of the Ford Motor Company has suggested there are some hooks in your profit-sharing plan, and I'd like to put to you some of the hooks that possibly may be within your plan, and see if you can answer them. First of all, what does it do to the principle of unionism, a profit-sharing plan? Won't you be creating economic and class distinctions as between your own workers? Let's say a man at Ford is a lathe operator. A man at Studebaker-Packard is a lathe operator. Ford, because they have a more attractive grill or for whatever reason, has a profitable operation. Studebaker-Packard, let us say, does not this year or next year have a profitable operation. Equal pay for equal work is supposed to be one of the tenets of unionism, and yet the Ford man may make as much as $1,000 a year more than the Studebaker-Packard man for doing exactly the same job.
Yeah, but the question here is this, that if we formulate a set of economic demands based upon the unfavorable economic position of some small company, then we turn over the gravy train to the General Motors Corporation, and workers and consumers are denied the equity that they have out of the greater productivity and the greater efficiency of the General Motors Company, because they are able to employ the most advanced technology in terms of automation, etc.
Well, still,
on the other hand, if we have a uniform demand based upon the economics of GM, we then inflict hardship upon the small company. And we say that if a big company, because of the volume of production, because of the advanced technology they employ, if they make bigger profits, then why shouldn't the worker and the consumer share in those greater profits?
Well, you say that the consumer should share in those greater profits, and we'll come to the philosophy behind it in just a minute, but won't car buyers who'll be looking for the biggest rebate go to the company with the best financial record? Let's say that Ford has had a particularly, well, let's change it now to General Motors has had a particularly good year last year. Chances are that if I'm buying a car, I'll go and buy a General Motors car because my hunch is that I'm going to get a rebate at the end of the year, as a result of which you'll be operating against the companies which are not as good financial shape as the companies which are in
but that argument taken to its logical conclusion would lead you to believe that you are in favor of the American public subsidizing by higher prices 97% of the production which is made by General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler in order to keep 3% of the production made by the independents into being. Now,
I'm in favor of supply and demand and free private enterprise, Mr.
And
Reuther.
if you had a rebate, then you would have a competitive price rather than a rigged and administered price. The prices in the automotive industry have nothing to do with the law of supply and demand. The Ford Motor Company, on their 57 models, they set the price of their cars. GM set their price a little higher. Ford responded by making a further adjustment. We have an administered price structure that has nothing to do with the law of supply and demand. That's been the trouble with America. We have gotten into trouble under a most unusual economic situation. Inflation is supposed to be the result of where the demand for goods and services exceeds the available supply of goods. We've had inflation under circumstances where we had much greater productive capacity than we had consumers available, because we had rigged inflation, rigged by powerful corporations who exercise monopoly control of basic industries and who can arbitrarily set aside the law of supply and demand and fix the price. And what we're saying is that the consumers of America and the wage earners have both been shortchanged, and the only way we can get them their equity is to get it out of profits after profits have been made.
What about tax money? This is another hook. Senator Butler of Maryland has pointed this out, that if your plan had been adopted in 1956, for example, General Motors' profits would have been considerably less, about $570 million, and they would have paid the government about $300 million less in taxes. if universally adopted, the profit-sharing plan, and I imagine that what you have in mind is that it be universally adopted because you want all workers and all customers to share in this golden cornucopia. If universally adopted, he says the drop in government revenue would be $4 to $5 billion annually. Now, we need big budgets now. We need big revenues now. What's going to happen to the tax structure?
Well, you see, the trouble with the economics of Senator Butler and Mr. Breach and these people, they are dividing up economic scarcity. And what we propose to do is to share the fruits of our advancing technology so that we can share economic abundance. In 1955, our industry was operating roughly at 95% of capacity. Today, it's operating at 60%. The steel industry, less than 60%. The home appliance industry, less than 60%. The tax base that we need to finance a stronger defense posture, to overcome our deficits in education and science, to also meet the Soviet Union's offensive on the economic and political front, what we need is a full employment, full production economy in which we are getting out of the American economy its maximum potential output, and then spread the tax base on that broader economic base.
Are you suggesting then that we lower the 52% rate on corporations? Is that the point?
No, what I'm proposing is to give the American consumers.
Mr. Reuther,
why haven't we got more purchasers?
Mr. Reuther, you're not answering the specific question that I put. Now, you know as well as I that 52% is the tax rate on corporation earnings over $25,000. Is that not so?
Yes.
And when you take half of what you call excess profits away from the corporations, then 52% of that half is not going to go in taxes to the government. And that tax money is going back to the individual consumer, who will pay at a much lower rate, thus depriving the government of tax money if your profit-sharing plan goes into effect. And it seems to me that is simple arithmetic.
Well, it seems to me you haven't been thinking about this problem very clearly. It's a question of 52% of what tax base? Is it 52% of an industry operating at 60% of capacity, or 52% of the industry's profits operating at full production? This is true of steel. It's true of every basic industry. The only way we can meet our tax needs is to base the tax thing upon a full employment economy. When General Motors makes half as many cars in 1958 as she did in 1955, she will pay only half as much taxes, perhaps even less than half taxes. What I'm suggesting is that the key to the economic situation is to expand purchasing power, because that will get us into dynamic balance between productive power and purchasing power, and on a full employment, full production economy, the government can get more taxes than on a economy based upon scarcity.
Mr. Reuther, you think the GM is only going to make half the cars in 58 they made in 57?
I know the industry is going to make at least 3 million cars less.
Well, under those circumstances, why did you junk your 4-day work week? 40 hours pay for 30 hours work that was talked about in your union meetings for so long and so loud.
Well, first of all, we never had such a demand. That was just in the headlines and the propaganda. What we talked about was that as automation made it possible to create greater economic wealth with less human effort, we wanted not the destructive idleness of unemployment. We wanted creative leisure, where people could use their leisure creatively and constructively.
You told our reporter...
What we said was, we wanted to try to work out a system, and as automation made it possible to create more wealth with less manpower, we wanted to absorb the difference by reducing the work week.
Well, there were a good many people at your convention here in Detroit this week who were somewhat disgruntled at the fact that the 30-hour or the 4-day work week was junked. But you told my reporter this week that you expect at least 5 million unemployed this year, correct?
Unless something is done to correct the present drift. Now, something's got to be done to correct the imbalance between productive power and the lack of purchasing power.
You've also said that you want to forget about the 4-day work week for the time being, because since Sputnik went up, we need all of our resources and we need all of our men at work. Is that not also correct?
And you will find that every delegate at our convention who talked about the short work week was concerned not with more leisure. He was concerned with getting the unemployed back to work.
Well, that's the point.
That's what we want to do.
If we need these men in our industry, and we can't afford a 4-day week for that very reason, because we've got to put these men back to work, you must agree with the Republicans that come May or June or July, there's going to be a considerable upturn, and that the economy will be in pretty good shape by, let's say, the middle of this year.
I do not agree with that. Because where is the purchasing power going to come from to stimulate the purchases of cars, to purchase the appliances, to do all the other things necessary to stimulate a full employment, full production economy?